Do you want to reduce your energy bills? Or maybe you want to use greener energy? Go solar and get a discount. Right now, Which members can get a 7.5% discount on solar panels and their installation if you use Heatable, a Which Trusted Trader approved service. You can also include a storage battery and EV charger, handy if you're looking at making the switch to an electric car. To make use of this exclusive offer, simply head to which.co.uk/solar-offer. That's which.co.uk/solar-offer before the 30th of September 2025. And if you're not already a Which member, you can grab a year's membership for 50% off the usual price. To do that, go to which.co.uk/podcast offer to get involved. Start your solar journey today. Go solar and get a discount with Which.
It's no shock that mobile apps are collecting your data, but just how much might surprise you. Welcome to this podcast from Which. Hello, it's James Rowe here in the Which studio, and today I've got Andy Laughlin, Principal Researcher here at Which as well. Andy, hello, welcome back.
Yeah, thank you very much.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Very, very good. Now, it's always a bit of a toss of a coin with you. Is it going to be dishwashers or is it going to be sort of data and privacy kind of stuff? What are we talking about today?
Well, it's not dishwashers, I'm afraid. Sorry to disappoint. It is today privacy, my other love.
Because you have been doing a brand new investigation. Give us the background. What have you been looking into?
Yeah, certainly. So we've done various investigations in the last couple of years, but actually for quite a while, looking at sort of smart devices, so your connected coffee machine, your telly and things like that, and how they track and use information. But actually with the majority of smart devices, they all kind of use an app. And actually apps are not just for smart devices. I mean, this is not going to be a revelation to people, is it? We use them for pretty much anything, from banking to sort of connecting to a torch to mental health. I mean, the list goes on. It's ultimately infinite, and all of these devices, these applications that we predominantly put on a phone or a tablet, although they can be used on other devices, are all have some element of data to them. And that might be no concern at all, or it might be a lot of concern. What we wanted to do is try and have a little peek behind the curtain and just sort of see what potentially is going on when you download and use apps on your phone right now.
And we'll get into kind of what you did, how you did it, and some of the findings. Do you want to just give us some snapshot headlines of what you actually found with the main part of the investigation?
Yeah, absolutely. So we tested some of the biggest name apps in the land. But, we're not talking about little niche utility apps here. We're talking about the big hitters: Facebook, TikTok, Temu, all the big names. 20 in total. It's likely people have at least a few of these. They may even have all of them. These are not niche apps. These are mainstream players. And what's really clear is two key points. First of all, despite there being rules and requirements, legislation, all sorts of things, realistically, nobody, as a sort of lay person, as a consumer, has any real idea what they're getting into when they download these things. Even if you do what most people do, which is read all of the documentation written in terrible legalese, go through every single menu, you're still not really seeing the full picture. And there's a number of reasons for that, which we'll get into. And secondary, the scale of information sharing is potentially vast. For example, if we take all 20 of these apps in total, all of them ask for individual permissions on your smartphone. So these are accessing aspects of your phone. So it might be using the microphone, it might be knowing your location, it might be looking at your contacts or something like that. Some of these they'll need for functional uses that you might actually want. Some of them may be less sort of clearly justified. All these 20 apps we looked at, in total you grant 882 permissions if you had downloaded all of them.
Wow.
That's a lot when you consider it. And each one of those apps has those different companies involved and things like this. And you think about your phone, it's a bit like your car or your house. It's one of the most personal things to us. It's probably the thing that stays with us more than even potentially our partner.
I'm almost embarrassed to say it's kind of one thing I could not live without. I appreciate a lot of people might agree. Do you agree? Could you live without yours?
I think it's very hard these days. I mean, I think, people have done these cold turkey on phones sort of experiments and things like that. But fundamentally, they're an extension of us because they're so essential. They do so many things. And I think what we need to really realise and wise up is when we download these apps, they might feel sort of safe and okay and vetted and so on, but they are giving really extensive access to your information on your phone. Now, they might ask you permission, they might do this and that, the other, but they're still doing it. I think it's about helping people understand what they're getting into. Because as I say, the information that's presented, which, let's be honest, most of us don't read, is only giving half the story.
And when you talk about the information that's given to us, when is it given to us? Mm-hmm. And how many of us read them? Because let me tell you, I don't. Do you?
Well,
I was going to say, in your day job or in your personal life, I guess it's a bit different. In your personal life, maybe you do now because of your day job. But do many of us read the terms?
Well, so we're going to take this with a slight grain of salt, but we surveyed just around about 2,000 people, just over 2,000 people, and around 16% who've downloaded an app said that they read the terms and conditions. Now, I would probably say that's claimed.
That's 16, you said,
16,
1/6.
Yeah, 1/6. And that's probably claimed. I mean, we're talking these documents can be pretty long, pretty dense. Generally, they're presented as a link somewhere at the bottom of the screen, or, hey, by the way, we've got this privacy policy over here, you probably should read it. Small print, I think would be call it in the sort of financial contract sense. And some of it is really dense. It is like a contract, in this term we'll use this, and in this scenario hereby afterwards noted this. It's like, oh my goodness.
It's not light reading, is it?
I mean, I read a lot of these things, and these send me to sleep, to be perfectly honest. I've also, I think my research has borne this out, is how much of this is up to interpretation. We did this research with a technical testing team, a digital, what's called a data protection officer, so most companies have got them, so an expert in data protection, a lawyer, and myself, who was studying this for ages. And half the time we're sat there going, might be this, might be that, could be this, they could be using that.
So if you can't come to a consensus, then how can the average person?
Does the average person have that team behind them at home when they're downloading an app? No, nobody does. And that's why we need these companies to be more upfront. We need them to be more clear. We need to talk in plain English to these to people, to tell them, okay, hey, we're going to do this and this, and this is how it's why. And if you're happy with it, yes. If you're not happy with it, no. It's quite simple, really.
And although hardly any of us actually read these documents or the terms or whatever on the App Store, how many of us care about, the privacy side of things, our data? I imagine it's a lot more than 16% actually care about what is happening to the data.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's been this sort of myth that nobody cares. And certainly there are people who go, I've got nothing to hide, I've got nothing to fear, just let me get on with using the service. And that's fine, there's no problem. But actually, the data suggests that more people do care. And actually, when they become more aware, they care more. So, for example, in our survey, we asked people, what's the most important thing to you when you download an app? And actually, privacy and security came top. That's ahead of usability of the app, the look and feel of it, the visual appeal, a range of different factors. It was important to people that it kept them private and secure than virtually anything else, And I think that really shows that people do care about this stuff. But this is also not about moralizing to people. It's not about me saying, oh, you should really, really care about your data and all this kind of thing. I'd like people to make their own choices, but we can only make choices if we know what we're getting into, isn't it? A bit like someone signs you up to a financial package, a deal, and gives you half the truth to buy a house or something. You later down the line, I wish I hadn't done that. Too late, You've got to get it right first time.
I think that's the important thing, especially as we chat today. It's not as if we're trying to scare people with what these app developers are doing. It's more just to give them a bit more of an insight into what we don't know. Because, before I was reading your investigation, I didn't really have a clue about, all these permissions that I was allowing these apps to, or granting permission to them. Before I press download, we don't really have a clue, do we?
Yeah, and I think if you're in the business of information and data and it's valuable to you, I don't know. I mean, I think having people not really questioning this stuff and not really thinking about it is probably quite good, really. You just want people to get on with using the service. And as I say, I mean, we're not trying to scare people here. There's not necessarily some great big cabal out there, like, harvesting on your data like it's the human blood. It's not necessarily like that. But there are things that happen. There are data breaches that happen. There are scandals that happen. There are companies that push it too far. And so we should have a healthy trust environment. But trust has to be earned, doesn't it? If I'm going to give you my information and give you access to my smartphone or whatever, you should earn it. And I think companies right now are not doing enough to earn it.
Should we talk about some of these permissions then that we are granting when we press download or install or whatever? What kind of things are we giving away for free? Because I guess we should touch on that first, actually, because we're giving things away for free when we download apps, aren't we? It's almost as if we're paying with something other than money. We're paying with our data, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's difficult with these sort of transactional things because it's your information. It's a bit like people often called it the oil in the past, and to a certain extent, it is oil because it's so incredibly valuable. I always think of it a bit more like oxygen, or the air around us, because we're all breathing it in and breathing it out. It's like this, and I think in a way these people are almost polluting the air sometimes with what they're doing. It's more in that kind of. I often kind of create that as an analogy, but I think absolutely, people should be more protective over their information, and they should be more attuned to saying, "Hey, to a company, you've got to earn my trust." Let's take some of these permissions. I mean, one of these apps, the most egregious one wanted 91 individual ones. So that's 91 different things on an average smartphone app.
And that essentially means 91 different things about me or whoever downloads the app. It's going to be related to the person, isn't it?
Well, it's going to be related to the device. So it's going to be related to the smartphone. And some of these will be operational stuff, things that they just need to do X and Y and Z. And some of them will be ones that you actually want and are justified in the way they've done it. Some of them will be ones that they've taken just to say, hey, we might need this, you never know. Or they might need it for a different market rather than UK and have never got any intention of using it. So it's a real old jumble of stuff, It's a bit like sort of said, someone signs you up for a load of other bits and pieces when you buy something. You're like, hold a minute, I don't necessarily want all this stuff, but they all bundle it all in when they've got you.
It's like all the tick boxes when you sign up for something, but you don't really often have the chance to opt out of some of the options when you download an app. It's almost all or nothing.
Or someone lobs all this stuff in your basket. Oh, do you want a warranty on that? Yeah, I think you probably do. Okay, come on in. And you if you don't stop and think about it, which let's be honest, we all don't do enough of, you can end up with a load of stuff you've agreed to without really knowing it. And so, some of these things can be what we call risky permissions. So a risky permission is an industry standard designation. And what it basically means is this is a permission that goes a little bit further than just the norm. It's something that, has a potentially invasive access to your phone. So let's say, for example, what's called a coarse location. So a coarse location is a general location. So you might say within a six blocks, as the Americans say, postcode area or whatever, as British say, excuse me, I shouldn't really use Americans, apologies. Or you can say a fine location, which is often called precise location, and that's to within like 5 meters. That's like almost like a GPS. So you think about the difference between knowing your general postcode area or where you are within a car, the car side. That's a big difference, right? So that's why a fine location is regarded as risky, because it's so much more potentially privacy invasive than taking a broad postcode view. So that's kind of things we're talking about.
And why would an app want to know your location, either this very precise location or more of a broad general area? Why would a particular app want to know that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are a number of different reasons why. I mean, some of these are kind of technical decisions they've made. They might say, well, for this feature, we need it to run with this permission. It makes it easier for it to do. Some of them, they might have said, well, we need this for certain markets. Maybe sometimes they're like, I need this permission to make old devices work. So there can be a number of reasons why, which make logical sense for the company. But I think what has to be the balance is it might make logical sense for the company, but does the person especially do they even know what they're doing, does it make logical sense for them? Because ultimately, the analogy I always use is if someone said, I'm a delivery company, can I take your house keys? Might not use them, but if you ever get something from us, I can unlock the door and put the parcel in. And you think, oh yeah, that'd be great. Then hold on a minute, so that company's just going to keep my house keys until they decide to use it. And then maybe they'll say, hey, we're coming over, we're going to use your keys. Is that all right? But I don't know about you, but I don't really want my house keys just sat there with someone else. So I might say to myself, I don't want that, But unfortunately, the way systems have been built, we just agreed to all this stuff.
And for some apps, one of them, I was just having a look at the list you were investigating. Strava is one of them. Now, this is a fitness app, isn't it? Where if you go for a run or a cycle, it will track where you go. For that sort of thing, you would totally understand why they might want your location. But then there is potentially another element to it where it's like, oh, well, what are they going to do with my location afterwards, apart from drawing a little map of where I went?
Yeah, and this is where we get into the kind of the weeds of it, really. A lot of these apps do have marketing services applied to them. I mean, this is incredibly complex as an area, because ultimately, if they're providing a free service, they have to make money. So we have to understand, if we're getting a free service, then they are going to try and make money. And some of them overlay a paid subscription or something like that. So we have to live in the real world where companies make money. That's okay, and it might be through marketing and advertising and so on. A lot of them will say we don't sell data, but we have to a certain extent, take a leap of faith with a company. And we have to trust them, and so that trust has to be, again, well earned. But unfortunately, we often are left in a situation where that trust has just to be given, because we don't really ever know for sure what's going on in the background. We don't know, if there's things going on. I'm certainly not suggesting it of Strava in this direct instance, or any of these apps for that matter. But we don't know for sure. When I test things, I always have to be within legal confinements. I can't go poking around too far.
As much as you want to.
Well, no comment on that one. But I always have to be careful, because ultimately, there are specific requirements for good reasons that say you shouldn't be poking around too much. But there's times when I have to go, okay, I'll ask the company. They'll tell me we don't sell data, and I have to take their word for it. And that might be fine, But I think, when we're talking about giving trust, particularly when it comes to a really sort of invasive aspect to someone's life, then data protection has to be really strong to make sure that companies do meet their obligations and do meet what they say they're going to do.
And are the companies who produce these apps, particularly the ones you looked into, do they have to tell us up front, i.e. sort of, in these terms and conditions or wherever, precisely what they're going to take and why they're going to take them? Or can they do some sort of backdoor ones where they take some data without telling us what it is and what they're going to use it for?
I mean, they have to be pretty transparent. I mean, data protection legislation does say, you have to lay things out and you have to, put things down on paper. There's also things where you do have to get consent. It's not as simple as, yes, you must absolutely do it in every scenario. It is scenario based. For certain things you do, for certain things you don't. So there's kind of a lot of layers to this. But they do have to be clear with people, and some of them are more transparent than others. I suppose the kind of the real crux of this comes into how clear can you be with people, and how clear should you be with people to help them actually understand. Because remember, with data protection legislation, it means you've got to be fully informed. Now, if I say to you, are you fully informed about all the apps, what all the apps are doing on your phone, would you say yes or no?
Definitely no.
And I think most people that's the case. And I think even me, when I'm investigating them, I'm still not fully informed about everything. I've got a decent idea, but there could be something that comes out in the next 6 months that completely blindsides me. I don't know. I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen. But the concept of being fully informed is a little bit of an illusion in this scenario, because unless someone has fully tested these apps all themselves, gone down the rabbit hole in every single way, read every document, they are not even going to be near informed about what they're getting into. So there has to be a good sense of trust there, and as again, can't stress enough that trust has to be hard earned.
And could a company, when they provide an update for an app, could the permissions change even then?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And these things do change. I think ultimately it should be an ongoing relationship. I mean, I'm not a personal believer that you take consent once and then it's good forever. I think you should refresh your relationship, and I think that's healthy. I think also just generally, I think it'd be great if companies were a little bit more of a dialogue with people, because ultimately there are people out there who, are not so bothered about this stuff. Say, hey, okay, I'm using these services, I'm getting them for free. If you make a bit of money out of me and sell me some ads or whatever, then that's okay, and those people should be able to make that choice as well. I'm not here to moralize about what's right or wrong. But when you get in situations where you're signing up for an app and then suddenly 15,000 marketing emails have been fired at you. You're seeing weird ads for this and that, the other, in all over the place, and things look like they're tracking you all around. There's something you've clearly signed up for something that you weren't expecting.
Yeah,
and that's a problem to me, because ultimately, unless someone's chosen that, they haven't made a proper choice, have they? If we're honest.
But then there's also the flip side of the coin, isn't there? Where, so this side of the coin is you can download an app, sign up for this, that, and the other, and your data gets passed on to this company, and you may have inadvertently signed up to the fact that that company can then sell on your data, which companies can do. But then the flip side of the coin is, what if they have a data breach and you didn't sign up to your data being passed on to a different company? You were quite happy with the fact that App X will just, or not the App X, or App A, or B, or C rather, will just keep your data in-house, but say they have a data breach, your data could be miles and miles away. It could be with anybody by then, couldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this is so far from going down to a shop or an office somewhere and giving someone information to get a mortgage or something like that. This is basically you're interacting with a global network of, most of these apps have got multiple companies involved, massive players. It always makes me laugh when people say, oh, I don't use Facebook. Nah, you do. If you've got any app out there, in our testing, 2/3 probably had a Google or a Facebook tracker in there,
Right.
Of some description. They provide these services and all sorts of things. So you're using these companies, these big mega companies, whether you'd like it or not. They're getting information from all over. They're providing services, obviously, and they're helping companies. We should put the balance on it. But they're also got incredible reach, and I think people need to realise that, whenever you're interacting with these services, you're interacting with a massive network, a spider's web, I would say, of different services and players. And trying to plot a consent relationship of any nature on that is a bit like trying to kind of, as I say, plot how where's my breath going into the air? Like imagine that you breathe it out. All right, that's mine. I get that. No, you can't have that. It's like, what are we doing here? So we just have to arm people with as much knowledge up front when they start the relationship. Hey, this is how we work. If we change something, we'll give you a shout. But this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it, and have that adult conversation with people, and then at least then they've got a little bit of a view of what's going to happen.
I thought we would quickly, just before we move on, I'm just going to get my phone out and go onto the App Store on my phone, okay. just so we can give people
demo.
An idea of what they're signing up for. So I'm just going to search for Facebook. I know we've touched on it already. Mm-hmm. And then I'm just going to tap on it there, it says update, but it would usually say download, wouldn't it? And then I can scroll down and it gets to the part where it says app privacy.
Yeah.
And it says that the app's privacy practices may include handling of data as described below. And it says that data can be used to track you. That includes my contact info, other data, identifiers. And then it says data linked to you. So this is about me, isn't it? The following data may be collected. So it says health and fitness, financial info, contact info, location, contact, search history. It goes on and on, doesn't it? So we're almost going back to the start here about really not really being aware of how much data these companies can collect if we just press download.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of these, as I say, these companies will have ancillary companies or other apps. Obviously, like Meta owns Facebook and WhatsApp and Instagram. A load of others have got relationships, via dotted lines and firm lines and goodness knows what else. So, the concept of selling information actually probably is not really true. I mean, because they don't need to. They share it between the different companies that they work with and things like that. But it is potentially incredibly vast, the amount of information you're putting out there. And, this is also really sensitive stuff. They have to be really careful when they're dealing with, say, for example, mental health information, reproductive health information, mood and fitness and things you're worried about. And, this is just like really, really deep personal stuff to us on, as you say, the most personal device that we own, almost like our best friend digitally, that's with us continuously throughout the day. And so we just want people not to be scared of that, but to be more aware, to think about it, to even just take a few moments when they're downloading an app just to think about information, think about data, think about privacy, rather than just, I want to start using it, let's go. Just do a little bit of interrogation, because you never know, that might make you think again.
And this conversation might make people, as I just did, pick up my phone and have a look at all these permissions. Can you backpedal once you've got an app on the phone? Can you sort of say, actually, I don't quite want all that data to be in the hands of whoever it is?
Yeah, definitely. So I think when you're downloading a new app, it's worth doing your bits of research, like we just said, reading privacy policies, having a look on the store, like you just did.
Yep.
Having a look around at the company and things like that. If you've already got apps on your phone, the operating systems have got quite a lot better at this now, giving you control to limit permissions, see what things are accessing, limit like how they can access it, maybe just when they're using the app, or even just block them entirely.
You often see, don't you, sometimes you open an app and it pops up, if it's location particularly, it might say allow once, allow while using the app, or allow always, for example. So you could toggle that one, for example.
And that's really nice. They've given more features. And actually, I think some of the builds in particularly Android now, they'll actually sort of purge permissions for you. So you can go in and you can think, it might limit some functionality, but it might be fine. I never was using it anyway, so just like block them from doing it. They should really tell you, oh, by the way, we want to start using this and that and the other. And as I say, the operating systems have got better at that. But you can do things like that. You can also, 1 in 10 in our survey had actually deleted an app from privacy grounds. So if you've got loads of stuff on your phone, you haven't used it for a while, or you're just a little bit unsure about it, get rid of it. Ultimately, you don't necessarily need it. And so it's not worth just having it there hoovering up information if you're not getting any benefit from it.
Yeah, it almost seems like we are part of the problem as well, though. We can definitely stand here, can't we, and point the finger and blame companies, but surely we're to blame a little bit by just sort of so nonchalantly pressing download on an app without reading anything.
Well, I think people just aren't aware, I think when I started working on smart devices, people just, people like weren't even thinking about, when you're buying a coffee machine or an air fryer, why I should even think about this stuff. And I think it's still the case with apps, there's a certain sense of kind of security we feel with an app. Oh, it's on my phone and I get it from a store, it must be okay, someone must have looked at it. So actually kind of true and not true in many ways. But it gives us that sort of sense of false sense of security that we might not think just browsing some random website which we'd never heard of before and going like, I'm not too sure about this now, because we're used to scams, we're used to all sorts of things. So I think we've maybe been lulled into a false sense of security, rather than blaming people. We've been lulled into a false sense of security, and now's a chance for us to maybe roll back and say, hey, okay, hold on, we're going to become a bit more vigilant as consumers. They're going to demand maybe a bit more, and we're going to push companies to be a bit more open with us.
So if we can be a bit more vigilant, then that's great. Obviously, keeping an eye on those permissions, maybe deleting an app if we're not quite happy with it anymore. What about those long terms and conditions? Those documents they send. This isn't just for apps, though, is it? It's for a lot of things, isn't it? But particularly for apps. How on earth can you read them? I wonder if you can just put them into ChatGPT and get it to spit out the main important points. But I guess you can't necessarily trust that either, can you?
Well, I think you can take it as a pinch of salt. What you can do is you could use many AI search engines available, but you could say just. And I think the key thing people need to look at is what's data has been collected and how is it being used. If you're going to read nothing else in a privacy policy, have a look at that and just sort of see what they're saying. Unfortunately, a lot of this is sort of fairly generic and top level. We'll use it within our legitimate interests. We'll use it with our partners and that kind of stuff. And it kind of where does it take me from here? Like, what am I supposed to do with this information? But at least it'll give you a kind of a feel for it. And obviously some of them do list, we'll have hundreds of partners, and, we'll do all sorts of things and la la la. And if you read that and sort of go, well, I don't feel particularly comfortable about that, then you can say, no, thanks, I'll move on, thank you very much. You can also as well do a few other bits and pieces like what's often called dirtying your data, which is a bit of a weird phrase, but basically it means using a kind of a junk email to sign up, and only giving the absolutely mandatory information that's required, to sort of like limit a little bit your exposure. But it's a bit of a kind of like a band-aid for a broken arm to a certain extent. It doesn't really fix the root of the problem.
And finally then, just looking forward, whether short-term or long-term, I don't know how long-term actually means, but do you think things will improve with privacy on apps?
Yes, I mean, I think, obviously data protection legislation has bit in a lot of ways. Companies do have to think about these things. Companies largely do take it seriously. Understand that, they have to adhere to certain things. The problem has always been these things can be open to interpretation, so like it's put into the real world, whereas in a product sense, you'd have like a standard which says specifically how things are supposed to be done. It's a little bit more loose than that. And so, obviously, companies will interpret it through the lens of what they want to do. And if your lens is, I want to get more data, then, but it will improve. I think the more consumers think about this stuff and it becomes genuinely important to them, and they express that. So the more we say, hey, we want better privacy standards and we want more security standards, the company is going to respond to that and go, oh, we need to sort this out because consumers are asking for this. And if we're not doing it, they'll go somewhere else. And that's the thing that really pushes the thing. But not me bleating on. Is boots on the ground, as such in the consumer sense. So, tell them it's important. Tell them it matters to you. Behave accordingly, and it will push them to maybe go, hey, wait a minute, maybe we won't just say it's important to us, we'll actually do something about it.
So you've done your bit, now we need to do our bit.
It's time to take over, isn't it?
Oh, brilliant. Well, thanks, Andy, for coming in. Another great investigation. Thanks very much for your time.
No problem at all.
Thanks for listening to this podcast from Which, the UK's consumer champion. You can find plenty more advice about what we discussed today in the show notes. There you'll also find a link to become a Which member for 50% off the usual price, an offer exclusively available to you, our podcast listeners. Joining Which will not only give you access to all of our product reviews, our app, one-to-one personalised buying advice and every issue of Which magazine across the air, but you'll also be helping us to make life simpler, fairer and safer for everyone. Don't forget to hit subscribe wherever you're listening, that way you'll be notified whenever we release a new episode of Which Money, Which Shorts or another podcast that we make for you. And if you want to get in touch with us, then follow us on social media, we're at WhicHUK, or you can drop us an email to podcasts@which.co.uk. See you next time.
If you're enjoying this podcast from us here at Which, then why not become a Which member? Right now, we've got a special offer, especially for podcast listeners, meaning you can choose any of our 3 membership tiers for 50% off the usual price. Starting at just £39.50 for a full year, you can get Which magazine delivered direct to your door. For the same price, you could also choose a digital Which subscription, giving you access to all of our product reviews, the Which app, and the digital edition of Which magazine. What's more, you'll also be able to use the Ask Which service for personalised one-to-one buying advice. Or why not get a full access Which subscription for just £49.50 for a full year. Don't forget, that's 50% off the usual price. To join Which or to find out more, just head to which.co.uk/podcast offer. That's which.co.uk/podcast offer. Or click the link in the description for today's podcast for 50% off a Which annual subscription.